Hi, it's Margaret. Well, we have had our first snowfall, so it's not a lot, but we basically have dusting everywhere, and the ground is more or less frozen now. So today I wanted to do a couple of things. Firstly, I'm going to be going around and just looking at a few things that, I don't know, I still find interesting, I guess, in the landscape. And the second thing I'm going to do is protect three plants that I have that are actually Zone 6 plants, and I'm in Zone 5B, so I'll be giving them a little bit of extra protection to get us through the winter. So this guy here is a Joe Pye weed. It's a chocolate Joe Pye weed, and my goodness, it does stand tall in the winter garden, doesn't it? And then behind that, we have some switchgrass. This is Cloud9 switchgrass back there. Now, I do really love this grass, but the one thing that does happen, we are in kind of a windy spot, is this. So we have some still standing tall, but this one, pretty much half of it, even more than half, has sort of tumbled over. I'm not going to cut it back until the spring because even if it is tumbled over, it does still give me a little bit of interest back here. And in addition to that, it does form some good habitat over the winter. So I leave it as is. And of course, one of the things I love over the winter is the hydrangeas. These are moonrock hydrangeas. Here is a shrub that I absolutely adore, and the winter structure I think is beautiful, and this is a viburnum. Even without leaves, you can see that layered structure it has. I really like it. On this side here, this is the Limelight Hydrangea that I purchased earlier on in the spring. This is its first season, so it's still really small. I think I purchased it maybe in a 2-gallon pot, and I'm really looking forward to good things from it next year. So over here is Carly Rose. The plumes on this guy are gorgeous. They'll have this kind of like pinkish tinge to them, but of course now it's all faded down to basically a tan color, but it's still holding its form. I don't think it lasts like this all winter. I think it'll probably be on the ground pretty soon, but for now it's doing lovely. This one is another one actually I was concerned about because I saw several sources saying that it was a Zone 6, and I had it here. I didn't have any protection on it the first year because the tag that I had said Zone 5, but it came back late, but it did come back, and now it's doing really well. I have a little tiny Mugo pine here. I love Mugo pines. Look how the snow kind of collects in those upturned needles. This is a dwarf Mugo pine. This one is only going to get to be about 3 feet tall and wide. I still have some beautiful Lado Kale that can be harvested. This kale is a real tough cookie. It's tougher than a lot of the other kales, and I will probably be able to harvest from this one for at least 2 or 3 weeks, and that's with applying no protection to the beds. It's just kind of sitting out here. So here we are at the ornamental bed in the raised bed area. Look at this penstemon here. It is gorgeous still. I did cut back the seed heads on this one because I found that it really self-seeded quite a lot throughout the garden. And I didn't really want that. I don't mind a little bit of self-seeding, but I actually had quite a lot of it this year. And there we have some more beautiful hydrangeas. And the coneflower seed heads are still standing. Pretty much everything has died back in this bed. There's a beautiful carex over there. This one is my perennial bed that I put a bunch of seedlings in that I grew from seed. There's still some coreopsis in here, some rudbeckia, some penstemon, and salvias, I believe. Most of the stuff, although it doesn't look like it because the plants that are left are quite big, but I would say at least half of the plants that were in here, I did transplant out into the garden. In a few areas of the garden, I've planted a bunch of these guys, and these guys are American Pillar Arborvitae, also known, I think a brand name is Speeda Hedge, something like that. And their claim to fame is that they grow pretty tall in the 20 to 30 feet range. They're relatively narrow, only about 3-4 feet wide, and they grow really, really quickly. So I'm going to pop up a picture or video or whatever I can find of what these looked like when I first planted them in, because they have definitely grown significantly. Now they are probably about 3 feet tall. Well, the tallest one anyway is 3 feet tall. I did put rebar on these. I normally don't stake my trees unless it's absolutely necessary, but because these were pretty tall and skinny, I did see and notice that they were leaning towards the east, and all our wind comes from the west, and it is quite a windy area here. So I did put some rebar in to kind of try to make sure these guys stayed more or less upright, not on an angle. This is the area that I mulched in my last video, and you can see I was able to finish mulching up there where the dogwood is, and it all has a beautiful layer of snow on it right now. I also finished up the drip irrigation in the other beds that I have along the walkway here. And on the other side of the walkway, we have a lot of sedums that are giving us that beautiful winter interest. Autumn Joy, your plain run-of-the-mill sedums, and of course the hellebores. These are established hellebores, whereas the ones in the beds I just showed you are pretty much brand new. But look at how gorgeous they are, and they give you that beautiful green color of live foliage, even when it's like freezing cold. They'll be a bit tattered by the time the spring rolls around, but I don't know. I just find it fascinating that it is minus I don't know what right now, and they're still standing tall and kind of shrugging it off. So the Thunderbolt Honeysuckle is only hardy to zone 6. And I loved the form and those beautiful leaves and the chartreusey colors so much. And I just had to have it in my garden, even though I knew it was marginally hardy here. So the first year I didn't cover it at all. And essentially I ended up with complete dieback to more or less the crown. I even ended up moving it a couple of times, but what has really made the biggest difference, I think, is the fact that now I protect them in the winter. And I had very little dieback when I did this last year. So what I'm going to do is there are a lot of really, really long stems here. I'm not going to worry about those. I'm not going to cut them back either. I'm just going to leave them. I am going to be more concerned about this kind of mound in the center here. That's really what I want to preserve. The stems kind of sticking out here will probably end up losing all their leaves and dying back. And I will be just fine just cutting those off in the spring, as long as I maintain that beautiful mound in the center. So one of the things about putting straw on top of perennials is that you have to wait until the ground is frozen. I mean, it would be much easier just to do it when the weather was nicer and not have to come out right now. However, what happens is if you don't wait until it is frozen, you run the risk of having critters like mice and things like that make their nests in that nice warm straw. By the time the ground freezes, they've essentially found whatever spot it is that they need in order to get through the winter. So the risk that they will come back to this spot and make a little nest in there is significantly reduced. Now, one of the reasons I use straw instead of leaves, because leaves is also another great alternative, is because we are in a relatively windy area here. And for me, leaves blow away pretty readily, whereas straw stays in place a lot better. Now, if it's out in the open with nothing around it, then it as well is susceptible to blowing away. But this is a relatively protected spot here. And I did this last year in this area and it was just fine. If I did find that I was having issues with the straw blowing away, what I may do is put a little bit of netting over top, like the kind of netting you would use if you're growing cucumbers or something like that. Once it starts snowing and we get a little bit of freezing rain or whatever, any type of precipitation really, all of this straw will start to mat down and it will freeze together and it will be weighed down a lot more than it is now when it's dry. And then there will be zero issue really of it blowing away over the winter. The next one I'm going to protect is this one, and this is a Lobelia. It's a cardinal flower, and it's called Starship Blue. Now, normally I wouldn't be cutting this back because I feel as if the foliage protects the crown of the plant. But these flower stalks are really long, and I think that they will impede me actually getting the straw on top of the plant. So I am going to cut it back, but not all the way down. I'm probably going to leave maybe a good 8-10 inches of stem there, just so that the crown still has that bit of protection from the plant itself. And then I will be putting the straw right on top of that. So I'm just going to leave it like that. And now I am going to pile on the straw. Going to make sure to get it underneath here as well, so it's nicely packed down there at the base. I'm not too worried about the top part here, simply because this is a plant that would normally die all the way back to the ground, so I'm not concerned about the tops here dying back. I think that looks good. So the last one I'm going to protect is a lavender, and this one is called Platinum Blonde, and it is right there. I don't know if you can see that right there. That's Platinum Blonde right there. And it has this very subtle variegation, which I just love. So I had to have it, even though it was listed as Zone 6. So it wasn't that expensive. And for me, it's always worth testing the limits. I'm not going to cut this one back or anything. I am just going to top it up with straw. And this is actually in a great little spot here because it's sort of surrounded by plants that will probably stay upright for most of the winter. So that will help the straw not blow away, because here, as you can see, we don't really have that much cover here from those westerly winds. Whereas with the cardinal flower, we actually had a little bit of protection from the neighbor's garage. We don't have that here. So I think the kind of collar here of plants around it will help that straw stay in place. And as I said before, once this gets rained on and snowed on and that kind of thing, all of the straw will basically get wet and compact down, and it'll be heavier, and blowing away won't really be an issue. once again, I'm not too concerned about these tips here being exposed. It's more about protecting the crown of the plant. So that about does it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.